Remember the time Konami let us make a card? For some reason, Konami thought it'd be a good idea to let the community make a card. Of course, they had to structure this project in such a way that said card would actually be support for an existing archetype, and not a random abomination concocted in a card maker. This would lead to a tournament bracket featuring 16 archetypes. The winner of it all would receive a new card. This was a TCG-only project, so the resulting card would be our fault. The voting would be conducted on both Facebook and Twitter. So, how did this event pan out, you might ask? While the sentiment behind this project may have been great, this didn't take very long to prove as a very stupid idea. Voting on the internet. What could possibly go wrong? Immediately there was a botting issue. Wait, what's this? What did I do to deserve this? The only consistent archetype I saw accused of botting was Valkyrie. My memory and research doesn't conclude this statement as fact. However, I have to say it's very true and real. The person responsible for botting Valkyrie very openly bragged about it and showed how they went about doing so, hoping to gain a following from doing that, which then led to people botting for Inzektor to counter it. This fact is what made Konami finally pull the voting down temporarily. Since it clearly became a bidding war, and the manipulation was blatantly obvious, it left them no choice but to actually take action. And, well, it was only the first round of voting. Starting over and taking further precautionary measures to prevent it from happening again wouldn't be that big of an issue. The poll had originally begun August 4th, and the relaunch would be on the 18th. Each matchup would have a 2 to 3 day voting period, then, within a few days, the next matchup would take place. Had they fired them all off at once, that may have risked diverting attention for each group in the bracket. However, this process made round 1 take nearly a month to resolve. The botting wasn't the only fundamental issue with this event. It's perhaps the most egregious, but there would soon be a community issue. One that would make itself very apparent, likely exacerbated by the botting incident. Now, this community isn't well known for its behavior now, and less so in 2020. So what do you think this translated to? Why, of course, arguing about what deserves to win. A mistake made from the get-go. The tournament featured 5 anime archetypes. Well, 6 if you count frogs, but I don't, because that would mean frog support actually revolved around these 3 stooges if that were the case. Does X-Saber count as an anime deck? The point is, a sizable chunk of participants had anime pandering to rely on for future support. Granted, most of these are wildly unpopular ones. TG had its time in the sun though, and Photon, I think you and I both know this archetype isn't desperate for support. Well, perhaps in terms of quality, but certainly not in quantity. And that was a common sentiment going in, that a lot of people set out with the intent to ignore the anime decks because they're more likely to get support down the line. You know, like how Photon literally got 2 cards months before this event was held. They weren't very good ones, but they were still 2 more than Gradle's gotten. However, there was an extension of this sentiment from a different angle. Inzektor, Lightsworn, X-Saber, Mermail, Fire King, and Gradle to a lesser extent were all decks that had a historical meta spotlight. Archetypes like Weather and Hazy Flames had no real historic presence in the game, with this new card being a chance to rectify that. These sentiments would begin to feel conflict for the rest of the project. Round 1 would finally conclude with these winners. The losers of this round highlight conflicting interests, with not everyone being on the same page clearly. A lot of historically meta archetypes bit the dust. The Water-Fire duo, TG, Lightsworn, and Gradle were out of the running, with the last 3 drops being 2 anime and 1 unfortunate Hazy Flame. Inzektor won fair and square over Valkyrie. On the one hand, it was deserved because of the botting incident. However, have we just chosen to forget Inzektor's historical impact on the game? The game almost died when this deck was good. Do you really want it to be played again? I bring up this sentiment because I believe it would soon lead to hostility towards Inzektor performing well going forward. Looking deeper into it, it's clear everyone wasn't exactly on the same page for priorities. Fire King and X-Saber were matched round 1. Assuming people did go off of the logic of kicking meta out, this was a case of pick your poison. Granted, X-Saber's actual meta contention has been questioned, so maybe new support could have erased that doubt. But in the case of Hazy Flame, it was up against Fortune Lady, an anime archetype. As I said before, not a popular one, so I can see the reasoning people were willing to follow. Just sad that Hazy Flame got dumpstered immediately. Photon knocked out Mermail. Surely a Photon would drop out next round, though. So Photon made it. The only anime archetype on here that I'd say legitimately doesn't need the support, which is something I recall seeing people mad about. 13 days on this round, by the way. The semifinals would run for a week, and our finalists would be... Inzektor got a link 2 years before this, I'll have you know. There were now 2 conflicted methodologies behind selecting the winner. Those who didn't want Inzektor to win because of its meta history, and those who wanted Photon out because it was an anime deck. Add in the sentiment of the card being wasted on a bad archetype, this would only further stoke the flames of war between the two. No matter who the finals would have featured, I think this toxic aspect was always going to come out no matter what, but I feel these two concocted the perfect blend of spiteful motives. Didn't help that there were still allegations of botting and cheating. After 6 days, we finally have our winner. After all the controversy, all the fighting, we have a conclusion to this arduous saga. But it's still not over! Now we have to vote on what the dumb card has to be. 2 days pass, and non-monster beats monster. Yippee! With how long this was going, I don't think I could take monster winning. A phase where we decide if it's a main deck or an extra deck monster. Then another phase on what card type of the corresponding deck type. Imagine a world where you got to vote for the Inzektor card to be a pendulum. However, there was one issue with non-monster winning. People were still salty and thought it a great opportunity to vote trap during the next phase. It didn't work at all, but it still messed up. This phase concluded after 3 days. Okay, the cards decided it's finally over, right? Wrong. Nearly 2 weeks later, we vote for what product type it is going to be featured in. Why not? A week passes and it's going to be in a 60-card set. Wonderful. Done. After 3 months. So when's it releasing? I sure do hope the OCG doesn't release support for any of the other featured archetypes in that time period. Dimension Force, which features support for 2 losers from this event, came out on January 15th in Japan. Grand Creators, the set that would feature the TCG exclusive winner, released January 28th. Congratulations! Konami covered their bases by announcing the card before the physical release of Diffo, just pretending like the over year-long wait didn't invalidate the entire project. All in all, what a great event. Thankfully, the wiki has a tracker on this. Inzektor eventually got their reward with the urgency of a sloth. Fun fact, Konami pads deck build packs with 15 more cards than the OCG version. This is so the product can no longer be classified as a deck build pack. So, this event essentially just gave an excuse to use those 15 slots on Inzektors. Wonderful. But surely the card is good, right? The only place I've seen this card played is in a sub replay. While not outright bad, it certainly wasn't the sort of card that was going to revolutionize the deck into a modern meta contender. But the card left people dissatisfied with the ordeal it took to get to it. Gradle, I gave Gradle support before Konami. That tells you all you need to know about the archetype's current status. Weather, who beat Gradle round 1, got 2 cards in Dimension Force. Remember how I mentioned archetypes beat Inzektor to their support? Weather was one of those. Very hilariously, losing and getting 2 cards instead of the one they would have gotten had they won. The new field spell gives you a free canvas and an extra normal of a painter. Then it provides a unique gimmick to Weather that actually makes it interesting to me, letting you use canvases as link material for a Weather link. Although, printing off your canvases isn't exactly the most profitable trade, if the deck gets more recursion for canvases, this has potential to make the deck insanely efficient. But so could more links. which is why they printed a second one alongside it. While another Link 3, Moonbow gets back one of your banished painters and floats into another Weather in the extra. Notably, they didn't specify it has to float into Rainbow, or even a Link. Thank God for future-proofing. Moonbow also turns the monster it floats into to an SP. Although it doesn't really solve the biggest issue with Rainbow's design, Rainbow gives all the monsters it points to negates. Of course, with the arrow placement and the nature of returning to the field, that goes offline. But this deck's payoff just being a ton of negates is an actually worthwhile design in this game. So it's honestly, for the best, it's not that good. Dynamite Powerload, the Resonant Dynamist card, doesn't even have Dynamist in its actual name. While being traded as a Dynamist and actively having effects to support them, it came alongside cards that blend the Draco Slayer lore archetypes together. Search when tributed. The only way to tribute in Dynamist is tributed for a summon or with Howling, which is a trap. Real great. Searcher. Dragonic Diagram is at 1. Here's a searcher for it. Of course, you could search the previously unsearchable Magispector field spell, but why would you when you can search any field spell off of its effect? The fact they also support their home archetypes feels like cheap flavor more than it does utility. They don't meaningfully help their original archetypes as much as they do Draco Slayer. Normally, I'd like the fact they're making a wave of support that ties in all these archetypes with Draco Slayers. It lets you mix and match which associated archetypes you want to play with this powerful shell. But this is Pendulum, and this card is designed to give you extension, so it's all just going to be boiled down as penned soup, like it always is. If they actually printed a Dynamist boss monster, maybe we could start bucking that perception, but alas, Konami sucks. Lightsworn got support recently in Legacy of Destruction. Well, the people were right. They got that support. 4 cards, 3 more than the winner. You might be starting to see a pattern here. At least in the case of the rest of the archetypes that received support, they had the decency to wait until after the winner. Lightsworn Archfiend Weiss is some of the best support ever printed for this deck. Being a free summon is one thing, but the fact she also sets a Lightsworn in hand to the top of deck and mills too, this is Lightsworn Circular. Being able to not only get these idiots out of your hand, but ensure they go off is a wonderful way to address the issue with them bricking you. If she gets milled, she lets you revive a Lightsworn other than herself. Just a perfect card all around. Dragon Ling is an extender that mills any Lightsworn from deck other than itself. When it goes to grave, it can get a Judgment or Punishment Dragon from your deck. Another insanely good piece of support. The new Minerva Synchro lets you mill 2 Lightsworns, and you can banish up to 4 Lightsworn monsters and mill cards equal to the number you banished. This way you can keep things going with your mills. She's pretty solid, but doesn't provide a clear win condition. The new Trap is another piece of incredible support. Negate face-up cards equal to the number of Lightsworns you control, and if the card gets milled, it sets itself. Insanely efficient, insanely effective. Good. Enlightenment Dragon feels like it's meant to be the win condition for the deck, but falls a bit short. Banishing everything on field and grave is pretty insane, but this affects both players. So they want you to have the Minerva Synchro out with it to prevent your monsters from being banished. When your opponent outs it, you get to summon both its materials, which isn't really good, but I appreciate the sentiment. Speaking of, they want you to make this card by running Punishment Dragon. Unless they print a wave of cracked Twilight Sworn support, this doesn't even seem like a good payoff. Overall, this support isn't bad, just not enough to give them an edge over Tier, a deck that's stolen their identity. But I've heard people play it with Centurion to some effect, so maybe it still has a future. Sylvan got a single Link to in Dimension Force. Revealing cards like in the actual archetype to get 2 monsters out is nice. It recoups the cost of making the link, assuming you managed to hit 2 plants. But it prevents you from linking them off. While an actual balanced design restriction, it also sadly makes the card meh in the game's current unbalanced environment. Seeing as it prevents the 2 monsters from being used for link material, it's not hard to see why this hasn't been assimilated by the plant pile. Just a quick update. When they released the new plant support in Master Duel, I saw Jess post that not only do you play the Sylvan Link, you also use it frequently. So what do I know? The level manipulation obviously encourages you to Xyz with them. Sadly, they didn't give Sylvan more XCs to bring out value in this fact. It doesn't plant lock you though. Dance Peon is actually full Fiendsmith combo and plant if you don't think about it. Fire King got the structure deck, which led to them actually breaking into meta contention, something the winner didn't manage to get. It's almost like making a single card for support wasn't a very impactful decision, was it? I don't think I really have to explain this one to you. You've seen these cards a billion times by this point. Mermail, and its water counterpart, just got 5 cards in Rage of the Abyss. Well, technically 3, but it's obvious these cards are making an effort to blend Atlantean and Mermail better. What with the new Atlantean Stooges just being a Mermail. This makes up for the other idiots that complicated the deck's consistency. Bodyguard sets you up to make a new rank 7 and get an Atlantean or Mermail from the deck. Sadly, they're unfortunately balanced and restrict you to waters for the rest of the turn. Abyss Shrine lets you add or summon a level 7 fish, sea serpent, or aqua from the deck. The Fool's Mind immediately thinks of Coelacanth. The Enlightened, however, know this is how we integrate Gate Guardian into the combo. She also lets you discard and draw on your opponent's turn. Given most of this deck's cards want to be discarded, this gives the deck a way to convert those into interactions, which is an extremely good update to the deck's playstyle. But again, she also has the Waterlock. Maybe if Konami starts reining in archetypes like Snake Eyes from being so unrestricted, Mermail could contend with the Flames once more. The new equip is a decent little tool, a reborn or extender that can also cycle back some resources. Not something I think the deck was dying for, but it's certainly appreciated. However, the new Link 3 does fetch an equip, so you can likely make the Link 2 Mermail to climb into the 3, then reborn the Link 2. But that's assuming the deck is going to want to do Link climbing shenanigans, which I imagine isn't the case with the new rank 7 boss monster. Send a card from hand to balance 3 cards. Notably, you can summon this over itself, and it isn't a hard once per turn. So if you get impermed, you could just slap another copy on top of it and go again. Hilarious design principle to give it resilience. Then when it's sent to grave, you can discard a card and just summon 3 Stooges from the deck. So, link this off, congrats! You now get 3 more Link material. This card doesn't waterlock you, by the way. If you can find a way to make Abyss Trite consistently in another water deck, this card has the potential to be absolutely insane. All I'm saying is, when they print the Gradle support, the world will know true terror. Photon Hypernova would, as you can guess, provide more Photon support. Photon Emperor is bad. It's a needlessly clunky card that requires you to send it to grave, then it gives you an additional normal. Sure, I imagine it has utility, but the deck doesn't really need that. Galaxy Cleric is an archetypal Avarice on normal summon, because of course this XC deck is well known for filling up the grave. Galaxy Normal Eyes Photon Dragon is a generic rank 4. It can search or bin any Galaxy or Photon card. It can also convert any special summon light monster to a 4 or an 8. Also, it gives lights a 500 attack buff. That's neat. If only this wave of support actually made more effort to aid making it more easily. Maybe then this would have been really good. As is, it's just a neat card you can toy with in other rank 4 strategies. Photon Time Stop is bad. It gets you any archetypal continuous, but it's on a trap. This is meant to get the new continuous spell that very obviously you want to be using on your turn, so it's real great. Very funny turn skip effect though. Galaxy 100 lets you foolish a Photon or Galaxy. That's right, the reason Emperor is the way that he is because you're intended to use this effect on him. Then if you summon a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, you get to rip a card from your opponent's extra. And if you see a number you like, you get to summon it. It's just a mid 2-card combo. A mid 2-card combo was not what the deck was looking for. Galactic Karibo is a funny card. If your opponent attacks, you can discard it, then summon a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon from hand or deck, and they're forced to attack it instead. What I like about Galactic Karibo is that it actually brings out a cool utility in the main deck Galaxy Eyes. It has an SP effect during battle. It's just a shame that sort of thing doesn't have very much application. As someone who doesn't care for Galaxy Eyes the deck, the main deck Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon is actually hands down my favorite dragon card in the game. So if anything, I hope there's support in the future that makes more out of it than just a card you slap under an XE. Speaking of, our last piece of support in this set is the cover card, number C62, Neo Galaxy Eyes Prime Photon Dragon. This card was designed specifically for me. I don't think there was a single person who thought the deck needed a multi-attacker except for me, because that's the only thing that would make me consider playing this deck. The thing's not bad, just not good enough to really matter, and certainly not good enough to gaslight me into playing this deck. Photon Jumper would then show up in Battles of Legend, Monstrous Revenge. Just what the deck needed. A worse Battle Fader. You dump this thing with 100 or Normalized, then search a spell trap. That's the utility of this card. There's also the Tachyon stuff, which I'm not counting because I actually want this video to end. Age of Overlord gave TG support. The most important card among those is Rocket Salamander, because it allowed people to just play TG and Snake Eyes. Of course, you don't see TG Snake Eyes dominating the game as opposed to the other builds. This support just weirdly lets people play Snake Eyes, but with an added anime flavoring. They got a spell that can search 2 names, that's nice. They got a synchro to fuel Excel synchro plays. I'm sorry, I don't find this support very interesting. I'll discuss it at length in a video about synchros in general. I'm conducting a survey on synchros for that video. I'll leave that survey pinned in the comments so you can fill it out if you want. I'm gonna do these sorts of surveys for other mechanics when I cover them in the future. So if you're interested in that, stick around. And the rest of the rejects. Valkyrie's only lasting legacy is being the strongest bad deck in Character Roulette. Cyber Angel teaches us the best way to ascend to power is by abusing women. X-Saber, I don't think anyone really cares about nowadays. Fortune Lady somehow still hasn't gotten support, even after Reptilian has. Hazy Flame was omitted from the Year of Fire. But of course, TG got in on the Year of Fire. Yeah, just print the best TG as a level 1 Fire Pyro after printing these cards. That's cool. It's not like Hazy Flames are currently 10 cards. You know what? Since they have such scattered typings, make Reptile, Insect, and Plant ones. I don't care if it makes no sense. Make this the first deck to somehow manage to play both Tri-Brigade and Ragnarika. And, Frog, well, it got to be a sprite engine. That's not support in the technical sense, but it was in the moral, until some of them had to die for that fact. With this segment drawing to a close, it's really a reminder that this entire event was pointless. Most of the losers made out better than the winner anyway, and the archetypes that clearly deserved it with the power of hindsight have seemingly been left to rot in the dust. If there's anything to take away from this, it's that the Gradle support is coming soon. Turu Puru Purun, Virtue Stream, Mermail after the Fire King's Year of Fire. It's a sign. It's the Year of Water. We just need a spell that blows up a monster and the ritual is complete. Gradle Wyvern. It's real.